Number 10. Hathor. The goddess Hathor was originally created by her dad, Ra, as a destroyer of men. She was supposed to punish all those who were disobedient to him. But then Ra was like, nah, I don't really like that idea. He just kind of changed his mind and decided to make her the exact opposite. Instead, the goddess of love. But she kind of loved killing men, and like even he couldn't stop her. So one night he gave her what was supposed to be a mug of ale, but actually made it like a special kind of blood, and she got so drunk off of it that she got too tired out to kill anymore and therefore became the goddess of love. Drunk in love, am I right? Her cult was centered in Dendera, where she was also seen as the goddess of fertility and childbirth. When the Greeks occupied Egypt, they compared her with the goddess Aphrodite. But unlike the voluptuous woman Aphrodite was depicted as, Hathor came in 3 forms, and I bet you can't guess which. She was depicted as either a woman with a cow's ears, wearing the headdress of a cow, or just a cow. Moo. Number 9. The beginning of the world. What an inventive way to imagine the beginning of things. I mean, the Big Bang is still pretty crazy too, but hey, here we go. Freaking love how much magic is in these stories. Like, I'm in, because that's all there was at the beginning of the universe according to the ancient Egyptians. Just swirling darkness, chaos, and magic. Heka, the god of magic, was the only thing that existed, waiting for the opportune moment to begin. Then a hill showed up called Ben Ben, and out of which the god Atum erupted from. He was lonely, so he mated with his own shadow to give birth to 2 children, Shu and Tefnut. Shu gave life, Tefnut gave order. They left their father to build the world, but they were gone so long he took out his eye and sent it to search for them. In the meantime, he just kinda sat there contemplating eternity all alone. He was really sad. This guy sounds like Zeus mixed with Eeyore. Anyways, his kids came back and he was so happy he wept tears of joy, and out of which were born men and women. They also brought his eye back, so that was nice. Number 8. Light as a feather. So unlike a lot of religions we've heard of, there wasn't really a concept of hell in Egyptian mythology. It was either you were worthy of heading into the afterlife or you weren't. Mat was the goddess of harmony and supported the belief that if harmony was disrupted, it must be restored. Every ancient Egyptian myth in some form follows this format. But the most important role she played was in the afterlife. When the soul left the body, it would appear in the Hall of Truth in order to stand judgment before Osiris. The heart would be weighed on a golden scale against Mat's white feather. If the heart was heavier, it would be devoured by a monster and the soul would disappear. If it was lighter, then you could go live in eternal bliss. So instead of several layers of burning torment, souls in Egypt instead faced eternal darkness and unconsciousness. The idea of non-existence was more terrifying than being cut up by demons. Huh.
Number 7. Jason and the Argonauts. Avenger level threat acquired. For some reason in our lives you find stories of our favorite heroes forming almighty and powerful groups. The Avengers, the Justice League, BTS. That one might have too much power. But yes, Jason and the Argonauts were a band of heroes on adventures, slaying beasts, taking names, and Greekifying the area. Sadly, for Jason and the Argonauts, every time they try and make a movie about it, it just never works for them. I don't know. They had a visually impressive one in the 60s, and everything after that has just been a complete misfire. Hollywood, if your casting calls come my way, just know I make a great Jason. Look at me. I could be Jason. A sword, a shield, and there we go. That's it. Number 6. Hercules. Hercules, the strong one, or the one where Danny DeVito coaches him through the process of being a Greek legend. If Danny DeVito is coaching you through anything, that probably means you're gonna come out on top. And yes, before you start typing in the comment section, technically speaking, Hercules is the Roman copy of Heracles. I know. However, it's kind of one of those things that everyone just knows the one, so anytime a Greek dude shows up with muscles, you blush and you think of Hercules. As far as Greek mythology goes, it doesn't get any more classic than a super strong guy with abs and biceps, and maybe a little bit of olive oil on him, I don't know. Number 5. Sisyphus. Oh baby, do I feel this one. Story of my life, honestly, day late and a dollar short. Some of you folks at home may also share the same fate as me and this chiseled Greek man doomed for eternity. This one is also one of my favorites. Basically, Sisyphus was cheating the devil. Cheating death itself, actually. After sliming his way out of the underworld one too many times, Big Daddy Zeus had to intervene. Also, when I say I relate to him, it's not because I'm a trickster who cheats my demise or cheats the devil or Hades. I'll explain. So, after Sisyphus had done what he'd done, Zeus sentenced him to roll a giant boulder up a hill for eternity. When he gets to the top, she rolls back down to the bottom and he has to start all over again every day for the rest of time. Not just life, for time. Sometimes in life it feels like you're on a grind and you work and work and work, and sometimes you go right back to square one no matter how hard you work. That sucks and that can be exhausting, but never give up, because Chetty ain't, and neither should you. Number 4, King Midas. The lesson in this one, folks, is to be careful what you wish for. King Midas was being granted a wish. He wished for, anything I touch be turned to gold. Now, I'm not an economist because I already have too many jobs on the internet, but you can imagine how at today's rate of gold, how wealthy you would be. Sheesh! Yeah, gold was valuable back then, but now, wowie woo. So his wish was granted, and everything he touched turned to gold, which for a good couple hours must have been the most fun anyone has ever had ever. Dude was seeing drachma signs. However, this wealthy gift he had been given quickly turned into a curse, or a burden. Everything he touched turned to gold. That included his food. Because of this, he starved. To fix this burden, he bathed in a river, and it's said that's why gold can be found in that river. I wouldn't mind having that power myself, but if I made food gold, or even worse, what if I made my beer gold? The har.
Coming up next, we have Bast, number 3. Have you ever had a cat look you up and down and kind of like expect something? Like worship? You know? Are you a cat person? Dog person? Let me know in the comments. Well, that's because cats were a big deal in Egyptian mythology. They even had their own goddess. Bastet was a cat goddess depicted as a woman with a cat's head. Cats had a meaningful role in ancient Egypt as they protected their food from rats and snakes. They were even seen as family members, and to harm one was punishable by death. Legend says that sometimes cats would enter burning buildings to save their families. If they died, the goddess would bring them back to life, hence the idea of cats having 9 lives. There it is. Now here's where things get confusing. You know that story I told about Ra? Well, apparently Bastet was in the boat with him as well. During the day she would ride with him, and at night she would turn into a cat and then defend the boat from Apophis the snake. But I thought that was set. So many conflicting things. I saw like a couple different stories who said each thing was different, so who knows. Number 2, Jeb and Nut. Yet another sibling partnership. We have Jeb and Nut. They fell deeply in love and could never be separated. They were that couple who would like constantly be like, oh my god, stop, right next to each other at dinner, you know what I mean? Jeb was the god of the earth and Nut was the god of the sky. A previously mentioned god, Atum, found their union inappropriate, so he pushed Nut into the sky far away from Jeb. He just didn't like being a third wheel. Jeb and Nut were close enough to see each other, but could never hold each other again. And she gave birth to Osiris, Isis, Set, and Nephthys. Some say Horus too, but I don't think that's true. Number 1, the treasure thief. Okay, I don't know how I feel about this story, okay? This doesn't really feel like harmony is in balance, but anyways. The treasure thief ends in a way I really didn't expect, and I'm not sure you will either. Long ago, a great pharaoh with a wealth of riches decided to build a pyramid in which to keep them safe. One of the builders was wise to his plan and decided to find a way to claim them for himself. He built a stone vault with a hidden entrance covered by a slab so he could get to the riches. But unfortunately, he fell ill before he could return, so he told his sons of his plan. The sons headed to the pyramid in the dead of night, following their father's order. But, unbeknownst to them, the pharaoh had laid booby traps and one brother was caught in one. Not wanting to be found or interrogated, revealing his other brother, he told his brother to chop his head off. Ugh, that he did. Loyalty? I don't know. The pharaoh, upon finding the body, hung it up in the town square in the hopes of like weeding out whoever's it belonged to. But the other brother, being so clever, got the guards drunk and stole back his brother's body in the dead of night. The pharaoh was like, I'm not even mad, I'm just impressed. He gave the thief a pardon, summoned him to the square, and gave his daughter to marry him. Number 10, the dedication of Eclavia. You know what you shouldn't do as a teacher? Make a student who is really talented self-sabotage themselves so they don't beat out another kid, which is exactly what happened to Eclavia. Eclavia was a very talented young boy who lived deep in the forest among his tribe. He wanted to become the best archer in the world, and he was very well on his way to becoming it. However, when he asked to become a student of the great Drona, he was denied due to his poor social standing. But Eclavia was not deterred. He built a statue of his idol instead and let it inspire him as he practiced archery every day. He became so skilled that when Drona learned of this, he was afraid he would surpass his best student, Arjuna. So he demanded Eklavya payment for studying under him, even though it wasn't technically under him, in the form of his right thumb. Then, sadly, this story doesn't really have a happy ending. The boy cut off his thumb right there and then, forfeiting his dreams of becoming the best in the biz. So overall, work hard to get where you want to and then give over to jealousy and let someone cut your thumb off so that you'll never achieve it. Number 9, Manushwa. Confusing and terrifying? We love a little bit of everything here on Bumblebee, which is why I bring you Manushwa, a terrifying creature / demon that delights in scratching the faces off its victims, a very specific thing, leaving them for dead. No one quite knows what it looks like, but the most common description is a hairy spider with soulless eyes. Spiders already have soulless eyes, I hate them. They are known for attacking only at night and sometimes cause strange blackouts before they attack. Now, many believed for a long time that it was simply the stuff of legend, a scary bedtime story told to make sure children behave. But in the early 2000s, the town of Kanpur, India blamed several attacks on the creature. Several people reported attacks at night and awoke with strange abrasions on their faces. Even more mysteriously, the victims entirely blacked out on the events leading up to it. Police as well as civilians became so convinced that it was real and it was attacking their community that they led special searches at night. But then, almost as soon as they had begun, the attacks stopped, leaving behind yet another legend of a bedtime story becoming real. Number 8, the devotion of Surdas. Genuine question for all of you. If you saw the most beautiful thing, place, person in the world and knew that nothing else would ever be as perfect, would you wish to keep your sight or have your sight taken away because nothing would ever come close to it? Personally, I'd probably keep my sight because you never know. But Surdas was so devoted to Lord Krishna that he had his sight taken away again. He loved Krishna so much that he wrote song after song in his praise. Surdas was a blind man but had a heart for music. One day Surdas fell into a well and Krishna saved him. Radha, his companion, became jealous and against Krishna's orders saying to stay away from him, she went to him anyways. As she passed, Surdas clutched onto her anklets. When he wouldn't let go, she revealed herself, but Surdas couldn't confirm her identity, so he held on. Krishna then graced him with vision and let go of the anklets. He was so stunned at having finally seen his hero that he asked to be blind again as nothing would ever come close to it. My question is, if he was blind since birth, how would he even know what Radha looked like to identify her? Would he just have been overwhelmed by her amazing goddessness? I don't know. Number 7, Osiris and Isis. Okay, so we aren't strangers to deities being a fan of incest. It was kind of like how they multiplied, and ancient Greeks were okay with it, kind of, but they kind of weren't. Anyways, the Egyptian gods were no exception. Isis and Osiris were 2 of the 4 children of the goddess of Nut. Isis and Osiris were married and actually really in love. They dug each other. When Osiris rose to the throne as the eldest sibling, his brother Set was pretty jealous. So he took the life of his own brother, cut him into little pieces, and scattered them all over Egypt. He really wanted to make sure the guy was dead. But then Isis wasn't someone you wanted to mess with. She had great magical powers capable of restoring life. She collected all of the pieces of her brother / husband and breathed life back into him. Osiris returned to life and they made all the love and then soon conceived a child named Horus. However, Osiris couldn't return to the land of the living, so he had to stay and rule over the underworld. So his son Horus was left to get revenge, and we'll get to that later. Number 6, Anubis. Now, I think in Western films that depict ancient Egypt, like The Mummy Returns, the god Anubis is often associated with the underworld. You know, that creepy half-man, half-jackal creature who appears to walk out of your nightmares? He's so creepy. Well, he did used to run the underworld until Osiris took over, but he was actually the god of mummification and the afterlife. So, not wrong, but not the whole story. Anubis was the son of Nephthys and Set. Well, kind of. Nephthys actually never conceived the child with Set. She kind of had the hots for Osiris. So she disguised herself as Isis and made love to him that way, and then Anubis came to life. That may have been one of the reasons Seth attacked Osiris in the first place, as his suspicions rose. But it was actually Anubis who helped Isis piece together Osiris, creating the first mummy. Fun fact, during the Greek rule of Egypt, Anubis and Hermes were seen kind of as the same, the people who ferried the dead to the underworld. Oh, sorry, and a point. Anubis was actually the one who weighed people's hearts, so he used the feather, the thing, you know what to do. He was responsible for doing that. Number 5, Horus and Set. Speaking of Horus, earlier, remember how I said Horus had to take over defending his father? Well, here is where this story begins. When Horus grew up to be a man, he pulled a Hamlet. He was like, "You killed my father, prepare to die." Thus a series of battles ensued, and one of the gods didn't play fair. Set kept cheating at everything and continued to come out as victor. Not surprising since he didn't earn his way on the throne, he killed for it, kind of like a certain Claudius. Eventually Isis stepped up to help her son/nephew overcome her brother. She set a trap for Set, but after some pitiless begging for his own life, she let him go. Horus was pissed, so angry some of the other gods got upset that he was so angry. They agreed to compete in a final boat race, and Horus was like crushing it. He was doing really well, he was about to win, but then of course Set cheated by turning into a hippopotamus and attacked the boat, therefore claiming victory once again. Osiris finally showed up and declared that no man should take the throne through murder. So Horus took the throne. Why Osiris didn't just settle the whole deal from the beginning is confusing in itself, but hey, kinda reminded me of the eagles that showed up at the end of Lord of the Rings that could have saved like 3 movies, you know? Kinda like that. Anyways, let's move on. Number 4, Ra and his boat. Ra is one of the most revered gods in Egyptian mythology, especially since he was the god of the sun. He was depicted as a man with the head of a falcon. That kind of makes sense. He was once the greatest of all gods, but had to take a step back after he got too old and tired, and especially considering his task, I can see why. His job was to drive away darkness and sail across the skies, delivering light wherever he went. But at night, he would dive into the underworld and have to cross 12 gates. 12 hours, an hour per gate. After paying his respect to Osiris every night, a giant snake named Apophis tried to attack and swallow the boat. Every night! Poor guy, no wonder he got worn out. Every day it got harder to defend, and even one night, Apophis succeeded, but could only hold the sunlight for so long. She threw it up, which explained solar eclipses. After Set was cast out after the whole nephew battle, he ended up serving Ra in his boat and kept the snake at bay, but there's something confusing coming later that I think you'll agree is very confusing, so here we go. Number 3, Raktabija. This dude seriously sounds terrifying, and I don't know how anybody beat him, but they had to create a whole god to get rid of him. Raktabija wasn't just one demon in Indian mythology, he could simultaneously be hundreds, thousands, millions. If one drop of his blood hit the ground, another Raktabija would form, and worse than that, the creature would actually get more powerful when a new version of himself was formed. It was like a huge narcissistic thing. I'm not sure how that works, especially since he's only a tiny baby part. Like, whoa, I'm so powerful. As you can imagine, he was incredibly difficult to defeat. Every time he spilled blood, it was like, whoa, there's more of you. So the gods combined all of their power and created Kali, the destroyer of demons. A grotesque looking goddess decorated with bloody limbs. You know the one, the lady with the multiple arms dancing about. Yeah, an equally fierce demon to face Raktabija. During their battle, of course, his blood poured onto the ground from his wounds, creating thousands of demons. But instead of letting the blood drop to the floor, Kali pierced him and drank all of the blood so not a single drop would hit the floor. And that was how she destroyed him. Kind of like the OG battle vampire. Number 2, Putana. It takes some guts to take on the dude who was literally born to destroy you, but Putana thought she could do it. Putana was an evil demon who was passionate about taking the lives of the young. Needless to say, not someone you want at a daycare. When baby Krishna was born, it was foretold that he would destroy all the demons. Literally his job. So Putana thought she could take the guy out early. She disguised herself as a beautiful young woman, laced her breast with poison and entered his room. Because of her disguise, nobody thought twice, and so she sat down to feed the babe. But unfortunately for her, she made a huge mistake. Krishna was born to destroy demons, never mind the poison, and as he fed from her, he sucked her life away instead. Putana died in absolute agony, and Krishna assured everyone that he was here to do one thing and one thing only: his job. And last but not least, number 1, Mahishasura. Look, I can understand appreciating the beauty of an animal, but when bestiality is thrown into the mix, we gotta pull the reins on that. I know Zeus from Greek mythology was all about that as well. It just seems to be a thing that gods like to do across the world. It's a global thing. Remember the king of demons? Well, this was another demon king who was the son of the king of demons, but not the one previously mentioned. But anyways, his mother was a buffalo. His father had fallen in love with the beauty of a buffalo and married her. Mahisha means buffalo and Asura means demon in Hindi, therefore buffalo demon. No man on this planet could kill him, and he was a very confident dude. He started a war with the people and won. His power knew no bounds because of course what man could kill him? However, there was a catch. A man couldn't kill him, but a woman could. But what woman could kill someone so strong? So the gods created the goddess Durga, and she waged war on the tyrant, finally fulfilling the prophecy. Boy oh boy, do I love a loophole.
Number 10, Clash of the Titans. An Avengers level threat, baby. The Titans were the big bad giants who ruled over the earth and the gods. Naturally, they all got along and there were never any problems, ever. Yeah, right. They fought like cats and dogs, though I never understood that because all the dogs and cats I know always got along great. But the Titans fought, and they fought some more, until your favorite boy Zeus had enough and kind of took control over everything. It's Zeus, it's what he does. It's too bad Aaron Yeager wasn't there to help out. Number 9, Prometheus. Poor Prometheus. This is my favorite tale from Greek mythology. I think it's rather sad for Prometheus. All he wanted to do was give us the knowledge of fire, and look at all the things that we did with it. Forged iron and steel, heated our homes, so no one would ever go cold again. And we cooked, which gave Gordon Ramsay 23 hit shows and a reason to curse when asking for the lamb sauce. Where's the lamb sauce? Prometheus went directly against Zeus's orders, and if you didn't know, that's kind of a bad thing. It can wind you up in a rather unfortunate position. A position like being chained up and having a large bird come feast on your intestines. Like I eat mom's spaghetti. She makes a good spaghetti. Thanks, Mom. You make a good spaghetti. Number 8, Icarus. I think we can all relate to this one, or at least have been told a version of this when we were flush. Things were going good for us. In a nutshell, Icarus got some wax wings and gained the ability to flight. Mind you, that was probably the dream of many ancient peoples. After Icarus got his wings, he got a little arrogant. He wanted to push his wings to the limit. Kind of like Iron Man in the first Iron Man movie. But instead of falling in a multi-million-dollar supersuit and looking handsome while doing it, Icarus sniffed one too many of his own farts and flew too close to the sun, where he burned up in it. So what's the lesson learned here, folks? Keep yourself grounded and don't sniff your own farts.
Number 7, Nishidak. Have you ever turned around at your desk thinking someone just called your name? Or could you have sworn you heard someone say your name walking home alone at night in the dark? This has definitely happened to me, and it certainly makes me wonder whether there is a supernatural reason. Otherwise, why does almost every culture have a myth related to voices in the dark? The Nishidak from Hindu mythology is a dark entity that lures travelers deep into the forest areas by making it sound like a loved one is calling to them. This is the moment where curiosity could kill the cat, because if it got the better of you, you could end up dead. The voices will lead you to a deserted area away from prying eyes, and then snap, it will devour you. But what if it's actually someone I know who needs help? Well, there is one way to tell. Wait for them to call a third time. The Nishidak can only say your name twice, so if it no longer says it again, keep moving, as it is surely the Nishidak. Number 6, Nail Ba. Part of the role that mythology plays is to establish rules and boundaries for society, especially children. If you don't want a young one playing by the river alone, you tell them a scary story about a monster who lives there, so they won't go near it. But did they really have to go this hard with this one? Damn! Nailba is a terrifying, dark, demonic spirit that walks the streets visiting people's houses. Her name has been written on the doors and walls of small towns and villages in rural Bangalore to deter the spirit from entering. Some variations of the myth say that she is the spirit of a wandering bride seeking her husband. If you open the door to receive her, she will take the man of the house and bring bad luck to the household. Another version says, which is kind of where it gets confusing, says that should you open the door in the first place, you will be cursed to die within 24 hours. Apparently she speaks in the voices of your friends and family in order to appear more trustworthy. Villagers write her name on the door to ward her off, as they should. Number 5, Boba. I love all the legends that circulate sleep paralysis. If you have ever experienced it, you know how terrifying it can be. We know that it is a global phenomenon, as most cultures around the world have lore surrounding it. The one that belongs to Indian mythology is the boba. When people experience sleep paralysis, symptoms often include seeing shadowy figures, you're unable to move, there is pressure on your chest, pretty much having a nightmare while you're awake. The boba is said to be a horrific creature who causes it. Made of shadows, the boba's entity preys on those who sleep on their back. Very specific. So no side sleepers here. It strangles its victims to death while asleep, and it is said to be a paranormal explanation for sleep paralysis. So side sleepers, like me, you're safe. If you sleep on your back, you're in trouble. Number 4, Hiranyakshipu. Is it better to be feared or respected? Respected, obviously, that's what I think, because hopefully no one will be looking to stab you in the back if they're so afraid of you, you know what I mean? So it was only a matter of time for the self-proclaimed king of demons, his words, not anyone else's. Even his own son was like, nah, dad. Even though he wasn't the one who did it, he wanted everyone to believe that he created the universe and that he was uncontrollable. His son was, of course, one of the ones who refused to take his belief. Not a good look for him, so he of course tried to kill his own son. No love when you're the king of demons apparently, but every time he tried to even harm his son, he walked out of it unscathed. The reason? Vishnu was protecting him the entire time. But how would they get rid of his father? Well, because he could not be killed by a human, deva, or animal, Vishnu created a blend of creatures, creating something entirely different. It was called Narasimha, and one day at twilight he laid on the king of demons' lap and disemboweled him with his claws. I feel like the king of demons was like, ooh, look, a kitty thing. Oh no, and then died.
Number 3, Narcissus. This one's in the name. Basically, there was a guy named Narcissus, and he was gorgeous. Like George Clooney, Brad Pitt, Ryan Reynolds gorgeous, all put together. Oh. And he knew it, and he loved his image. Now, as a guy who goes on camera every day, naturally, you hate yourself. You hate your self-image. That's how it goes. Ask anyone here, they would tell you the same thing. But also, as someone who's on camera every day and funny from time to time, you kind of like yourself on camera and you kind of like your self-image. It's a very strange relationship we have. However, no one is as bad as it comes to as Narcissus. One day in the forest he came across a body of water where he saw his reflection cast, and it was so handsome, so gorgeous, that he couldn't look away. Ever. Hence the name Narcissist, or Narcissist. Or what most girls in high school find out what their boyfriends have. Narcissism. Ladies, let me know. Have you ever dated someone who has narcissism or looked in the mirror too long? Let me know, I'm curious. Number 2, Medusa. I feel like a lot of people know this one. Medusa, the half beautiful lady, half head of snakes in her head, and half monster thing with powers. Yes, I realize that was 3 halves and that doesn't add up, but you're talking to a guy who was voted class clown in the high school yearbook and not voted most likely to succeed in math. Because I just wouldn't. But she was the Gorgon monster who would turn men into stone. I do know that. If they looked into her eyes. That wasn't until your boy Perseus showed up like Link with the mirror shield and gave her a taste of her own medicine. What's the lesson on this one? I'm not sure. Maybe it's don't be so sure of your abilities. Maybe it's seeing things through. Or maybe it's having an extensive knowledge of tactics from a late 90s Nintendo character. That you never know when you're going to need that. You never know. I know that stuff. That can come in handy. Number 1, Pandora's Box. I know you guys know this one, but this one is so simple. At first glance, it's not about turning things into gold or weird snakehead ladies or giants rising from beneath the earth to fight each other. It's a box. Something ain't good in that box, but it's just a box. So don't open it. I'm gonna say it again because there's gonna be people in the comment section that are gonna say, but Chetty, because you said don't open it, that means I really wanna open it. Imagine I'm Robert De Niro telling you not to open it. Nope, no way. Nope, not gonna happen. Nope, null and void. Don't do it. Don't do it. That's how you know I'm serious, because I did a bad impression. Oh great, somebody opened it. Yes, that's right, Pandora's box was opened and it said that all the evils of the world were released from the box. Good tale, good moral, but who the heck thought putting all those evil things in the world in the box was a great idea? Whatever happened to just having memento boxes? You know, you open up a thing, like this is the time I farted on camera, this is the time I went to the cottage, you know what I mean? Whatever happened to that? Number 10, Boulder. When looking at ancient myths and stories for a while, you'll come to notice some shocking similarities in these cultures' stories. Some of these cultures interacted with one another and some did not, which to me says we're just good storytellers. The tale of Balder is like that of Achilles, a young and strong warrior made invincible by his mother. Mothers have that ability. Achilles was dipped in the river Styx. Balder was given a spell, each with their own weakness and each with their own invulnerability. Achilles and his heel, Balder and, well, a mistletoe. Loki made a dart out of one, and Balder wasn't so invincible anymore. Boy, that Loki guy sure causes a lot of trouble. Also, if you played God of War, the climactic scene at the end with Balder, ooh, especially troubling. You know what I'm talking about. Good stuff, good story. Number 9, Yggdrasil. The big bad tree that you see every time you see Norse stuff. A connection between all the 9 realms, and a place where Norse gods deliberate on godly matters. I don't know what that is, but they talk there sometimes. Kind of like when your parents talk in the room. You know what they're talking about, but you know it's important. It's almost as if people knew how important trees were. I mean, we use trees for everything. Paper, houses, sometimes people on the West Coast are like a different kind of tree. You know what I'm saying there, brother? I got Chris, I got him, he's laughing. I like to make Chris laugh. You guys gotta laugh sometimes. The tree is life. It represents life, brother. Kind of like what trees actually do in real life. I swear, one of the first lessons I ever got in school was that tree equals good, and we need tree, so don't cut down tree. We need to breathe, please. I swear it was one of my first lessons. Maybe because we're Canadian, I grew up in the fort, like in the hillbilly country. I don't know, but that's what I learned. Number 8, Ragnarok. The apocalypse, the end times. When mom says I have to eat my dinner before I eat cookies. Oh, it's the end of the world. Let's be honest, I never really had an issue with eating. Come on, let's be real here, come on. Ragnarok is the prediction of end times, and every civilization has their own. Ragnarok is slightly different though from its counterparts, as instead of one event like a giant tsunami or a flood, it's more of a series of events that are the signs of end times. Kind of like Call of Duty. First it was greedy microtransactions, then it was jetpacks. Lately, it's just unbalanced hackers. All signs of the end times.
Number 6, giant cloud brains. I do love gazing up at the clouds, making up stories like, that's a dragon, that's a chariot, that's a bumblebee. No one knew thousands of years ago that clouds are just dense collections of water vapor floating through the atmosphere, so when they saw things in the cloud, they thought they were real. So in a way, it kind of makes sense. According to Norse mythology, the world was made up from human severed body parts, specifically of the giant Ymir. His blood turned into the oceans, his flesh became the land, his bones the mountains, his teeth the rocks, his hair plants, and his eyelashes became Midgard. So as much sense as that makes, the clouds were his brains. His skull was tossed up into the sky, held up by dwarves, they're still up there. His brain was tossed separately, and that made the clouds.
At number 5, mead and poetry. There are many creation stories for Norse gods that are pretty weird. The gods were created from all kinds of things and it's a little complex, but one of the weirder creation stories is that of the god Kvasir, known to be the wisest of them all. The story goes that the gods just won a war and they were looking to celebrate their victory with a special drink. They all chewed berries and spat them out to ferment them and create alcohol. However, instead of making a drink, they made a person, and that person was Kvasir. His name literally translates to fermented berry juice, so it really doesn't get more straightforward than that. This new god became the smartest god to have ever existed. He was known to share his wisdom with anyone who would listen and traveled far and wide to share his knowledge. Sadly though, he was too wise for everyone and Kvasir was killed by dwarves and they drained his blood. They then used this blood to create a special kind of mead that granted poetic skills to those who drank it. It is believed that this drink was the birth of poetry, so Kvasir's death ended up creating something beautiful after all.
Number 4, kitten footsteps. If you have a dog that's a little tempestuous and keeps breaking out of their collar, then listen up. We've been doing it all wrong. The strongest collar is one that's embedded with the sound of cat footsteps, such as the one used to keep Fenrir at bay. Fenrir was a colossal wolf offspring of the god Loki because again, he was super creative when it came to having kids. The gods were so afraid of him that out of the 3 monsters Loki had, this one they kept under lock and key. They reared him up as a pup and the only god fearless enough to approach him was Tyr, the upholder of law and order. As it grew, they kept putting chains on the beast, clapping every time Fenrir broke through them to disguise their intent as a test of strength. But soon they sought out the dwarves, because they were awesome, for their skill. They forged a chain of unequivocal strength. Instead of metal, it was made from the sound of cats' footsteps, the beard of a woman, the roots of mountains, the breath of fish, and the spittle of bird. All things that don't exist. When they showed Fenrir, he suspected something was up because it was so light, so he asked for a god to put their hand in his mouth as collateral. Tyr did so, knowing that he would lose his hand because it was gonna work. He did, and Fenrir, unable to break it, was transported to an isolated keep, and there he stayed until Ragnarok, because he's gonna kill Odin.
Number 3, elves. Everyone loves elves. The population of elves seems to significantly increase when there's a fan expo in town. Go figure, I wonder why that is. Elves in Norse mythology represent a small divine figure. Similar to the dwarves, they are creators of valuables and have their strong place in mythology. And for some reason, when the elves were no longer needed in the land of Vikings and Mede, they went to work for a fat man in a red coat in the North Pole. And before you even ask, yes, Father Christmas has his roots in Norse mythology. And yes, before you ask, I know him personally, and I will be telling him who's naughty and nice this year. Number 2, Kraken. I always used to think the Kraken was something Johnny Depp and Davy Jones had to deal with, but that's just not the case. I mean, this is the reason why I have a fear of water I can't see the bottom of. Look, I have no fear of water and I have no issues swimming. I'm actually a surprisingly good swimmer. Chris would be surprised. But good swimmers or good sailors alike are no match for the Kraken. The Kraken is a large squid or octopus-like creature that preys on doomed sailors and ships. Using his large tentacles, he wraps himself around your vessel and pulls you to the cold depths below. Horrible. Some Norse depictions of the large suction cup beast are as big as islands. Maybe with enough hand-holding and teamwork, you can take down a giant squid or octopus, sure, maybe. Why not? But we're trying to take one down the size of an island? I don't think it's happening, dude. There's no shot, dude. I don't think so. Big as an island? You're gonna need a spear like this big. That's big. Number 1, the Droger. The unliving, the deceased. Past your expiration date. It is the end of a journey that we call life, and it seems pretty much every culture we have dealt with has had the most respect possible. A lot of ancient civilizations had their way of paying respects and staying close to the ones that they love, even in the afterlife. The Droger, similar to the ones you find in Skyrim, are undead creatures with grey flesh that protect the tombs that are filled with gold and valuables from potential looters and robbers, and maybe the occasional dragonborn. Oftentimes, a lot of warriors were buried or put in such tombs, which means a lot of loot and ceremonial blades to commemorate the life of the warrior in question. I'm curious, folks, let us know, if you had to be buried with something that you just can't part with even at the afterlife, what would it be? What would it be? For me, I'd say video games, but I don't know, it might be some Lego or something. Let me some Legos, bro. Let me some Legos.
Alright, number 10, Thor goes fishing. Jormungand was yet another one of Loki's creative offsprings, born to be the destroyer of Thor during Ragnarok. In order to prevent this, they threw the great beastly serpent into the water, and it was supposed to like to hold the world together until Ragnarok. But Thor was a little scoundrel and didn't mind risking it all. Aegir and Ran, 2 lovely, hospitable giants, as I heard, agreed to host the gods for an immaculate feast. But when Thor arrived, he consumed 2 of the 3 cows that they had brought for the feast. They were like, Thor, dude, that was supposed to be for everybody. So they're like, okay, I guess we're gonna have to go fishing the next day. Then Thor slaughtered one of their biggest bulls to use for bait, which also sucked, but that was gonna be okay, he was gonna be strong for fishing. Anyways, they get out into the waves, and while the one giant gets 2 whales, Thor heads out further with a bigger game on his mind. Jormungand was, after all, beneath the waves. He cast his line out, and sure enough, he got a massive bite. The force was so immense that it pulled his feet through the boat, and the serpent's head was like coming up through the boat, about to bite him. Thor had his hammer ready to slay the beast, his mortal enemy, but then the giant cut the line because he got scared and the serpent slithered back into the water. Then Thor was so mad, he threw him overboard. Literally, the worst guest to have at a party. Eats all your cows, almost causes Ragnarok, and then throws you into the ocean with a giant serpent at the bottom.
Alright, at number 9, good laugh. We all love a good laugh, right? Well, apparently a good laugh is what saved the Norse gods from facing vengeance from the giantess Skadi. You see, the gods killed Skadi's father and she demanded vengeance, but after a lot of negotiating with her, they were able to talk her out of that and instead offered her 3 things as reparations. The first was a husband of her choosing, however she could only choose him by his feet for some reason, don't ask me why. The second was having her father's eyes memorialized in the stars, and the third was just a good old laugh. Out of Scotty's 3 reparations, the hardest task was making her laugh. The gods tried everything to get a giggle out of the giantess, but nothing seemed to work. That's when Loki, the trickster god, came through and was basically like, "Step aside boys, let me handle this." And he sure did handle things. Loki then brought in a goat, tied a rope to it, and tied the other end to his nads, and proceeded to play tug of war with the goat. Like that. Both Loki and the goat screamed out in pain, as you can imagine, and Loki collapsed. And that is what made Scotty laugh.
Number 8, a little bit of incest. Why not? Can we even do a list about mythology without mentioning incest? No, not probable. Why? Because, I don't know, the gods loved it. And people needed to populate the earth back then, so it wasn't too far-fetched of an idea. Anyway, even though Norse mythology doesn't love the idea of incest, doesn't mean it didn't happen. The goddess Signy fell into a pretty crummy marriage, and so to solve her situation, incest. She was married to Siggeir and didn't like him because 1, not a nice guy, and 2, not manly enough for her. He also was a terrible husband. He killed her father and all of her siblings, except for 1. Not cool, man. But the one that did survive, they teamed up to overthrow her hubby. Her 2 sons joined in, but they weren't ruthless killers and completely failed at all the times they tried to kill her dad. So she needed to up the ante, and that meant keeping it in the family, so she slept with her brother for 3 nights in order to spawn the force that would rid her of her husband. This son, when it came to fruition, knew what was up and eventually assassinated her husband. Does this remind anyone of like a certain god origin story in Greek mythology? Let me know in the comments if you're thinking what I'm thinking.
Number 6, Valkyries. Oh yes, the beautiful Valkyries. For such a gorgeous image, they have a rather grim job. Whenever someone falls in battle, it's up to these lovely ladies to guide them to the afterlife. In a way, they're kind of like battle angels. Pretty cool. It literally translates to chooser of the slain. Norse mythology, like a lot of others, has its fair share of violence, but hey, I guess if I fell in battle, I'd want to be carried off by a gorgeous woman who can fly. I hope you folks have been praying towards Odin, otherwise you won't be able to make it to Valhalla, which is bad because that's where all the good little Viking men and women go. So they can be with their ancestors and drink meat all day, which, dude, drinking, you ever had meat? It's delicious. Yes, please. Sign me up. Oh, I love mead so much. Number 5, Thor's hammer. It's kind of hard not to talk about the Avengers movies because when you think of Thor and his hammer, it's really hard to not think about the handsome Hemsworths or the imagery from the movie. The story of Thor's hammer is rather interesting, however. So Loki, being the trickster that he is, gave a competition to the master dwarfsmiths to create gifts for the gods. After enough gold to keep Scrooge McDuck happy and a sailboat that could fit in your pocket, the hammer was revealed. Mjolnir, a hammer that would never shatter, always hit its mark and returned to Thor when thrown. Considering how many times Thor has thrown his hammer at his brother and his foes, I feel like it's safe to say that Loki's plans kind of backfired. Yet again, his plans backfire a lot actually.
At number 3, target practice. We all know about Odin's son Thor. He is the most famous child of the Norse Allfather, but you might not know about Odin's other son, Balder. Balder was known for being well liked by everyone. Well, maybe not everyone. Loki was the one person who didn't like Balder, and he ended up being Balder's undoing. One night, Balder started having nightmares where he pictured his own death. This had his mom really worried, and so, as any mother would do, she sought out to protect her child at all costs. She went to everyone and everything in existence, including inanimate objects, and she asked them to take an oath promising to never hurt Balder. These oaths were no joke, and as everyone agreed to take this oath, this essentially made Balder invincible. The gods found this so great, so they made a game where they would use Balder as target practice and would throw weapons and other miscellaneous items at him, only for all of them to just bounce right off of him. This was all fun and games until Loki got fed up with Balder being the center of attention. Loki ended up finding the one thing that Balder's mother did not get an oath from, and that was mistletoe. Loki then made a spear out of mistletoe, and the next time the gods played their game with Balder, Loki gave the spear to someone who threw it at Balder, and then he died.
Number 2, a naughty little squirrel. Everyone has that friend that loves the drama so much that most of the time they are the drama. And of course, everyone has had squirrels ruin their gardens or outdoor wiring at some point. How on earth do these two things relate? Well, let me introduce you to Ratatosk. In Norse mythology, all creatures live on the Tree of Life, which includes a little squirrel who loves to cause the drama, specifically between a dragon and an eagle who live on the tree. Ratatosk's job is to ferry messages throughout the tree, and quite often the dragon and the eagle love to insult each other. The squirrel loves it so much that he will even lie to keep it going, but it doesn't stop there. He will even spread gossip and unrelated news to the other gods. The squirrel will do anything to keep the hatred flowing throughout the tree, which somehow explains how rude squirrels are most of the time. Like, honestly, what the heck. Except one time, one came up on my shoulder and like just hung out, and it was really nice. So they're not all bad.
Finally, at number 1, Thor the Bride. If you know anything about Thor, it's that he loves his hammer Mjolnir more than anything, and if he loses it, he would move heaven and earth to get that sucker back. Well, Thor's hammer was once stolen by a giant named Thrym, and Thor and Loki came up with an insane plan to get it back. Thor tried to negotiate with the giant to give him back his hammer, but the giant said that the only way he would return Mjolnir to Thor was if he could marry Freya. That was certainly not going to happen, at least not for real. Thor decided to impersonate Freya instead and married the giant, and when Loki caught wind of this plan, he decided to join. Loki disguised himself as a handmaiden in order to watch this whole thing unfold. The giants ended up buying Thor and Loki's disguises, and they made it to the wedding feast. The giants were getting a little suspicious because he seemed manly, and especially when it came to his appetite, but that didn't matter in the long run because the moment that Thor was able to get his hands on Mjolnir, he not only left the giant at the altar, but he killed the giant and all of the wedding guests too. Sounds like the Red Wedding from Game of Thrones, honestly.